the Petey Performance Podcast. Today's episode of the podcast is a conversation with Bristol City and the Irish national team's Chloe Mustaki. We had a conversation about the women's national team and the upcoming World Cup, as well as selection for that squad. We also talked about her last season with Bristol City, in which they got promoted to the Women's Super League. And we talked a lot about mindset, her many injuries, including her ACL and her osteitis pubis. And we talked about all of the lessons that she has learned as an athlete and as a person through those experiences. So I hope you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, please remember to like it, share it, and send it. Chloe Mustaki, welcome to the Petey Performance Podcast. Great to have you here. Our second footballer to have on the podcast, and there was a bit of coincidence with Georgie being on a couple of weeks ago and then you coming on this week. So thanks for coming on. Would you want to tell the people about the funny coincidence?
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for having me on. Delighted to be here. So yeah, it was funny. Myself and my boyfriend, Greg Sloggett, we had met up with Georgie for coffee. And then just the next day, I'd seen on his story that he reposted his podcast interview with you guys. So mad time and coincidence. But yeah, Georgie's a great guy. So it was nice to meet him. But yeah, looking forward to today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you here. But this is probably the second in terms of most important things that you've done today. You were in school earlier talking to the current students about your story, I suppose. So how was that? How did that go?
Yeah, it was amazing. It's actually 10 years since I did my Leaving Cert, so fitting that I was back there today. Yeah, it was lovely. I went back and did a bit of a Q&A with the students and saw many of my old teachers, which was lovely. But not much has changed, even though you think you'll leave and everything will be different when you come back. But no, it's pretty much the same. But it was nice, yeah, just talk through my experience. And then there's actually a few of the girls that are playing, I think, Rovers under 17s, and then one girl who's in the underage international setup. So it's great for them, you know, to be able to maybe ask some questions and pick my brains on stuff. But no, it was great. And yeah, I've really fond memories of my time over there in Andrews. So it was nice to be back.
And it's good for them as well to see a path now to professionalism.
Yeah.
Which wasn't apparent for you when you were in school.
I know. Yeah. I mean, the big difference, like, you know, 10 years ago when I was doing my Leaving Cert, the idea of going full time then was very foreign to me and wasn't realistic at all. That's what I was explaining to them today. But it's so exciting for girls now in their late teens, like the idea of going full time straight away after their Leaving Cert or kind of in tandem while studying part-time is an amazing opportunity, and they can really live out their dream from an early age and have a long career kind of making money. And at the time, you know, 10 years ago, women's football was nowhere near where it is today. So it wasn't realistic for me to be able to do that. I needed to get, you know, an undergrad, didn't need to get a master's, but decided to do that. And I needed that extra education because yeah, I mean, being a professional football player wasn't at the forefront of my mind then. It was just education, you know, stability, income, and keep playing football for as long as I could.
Did you get a chance to talk to them individually? And then in relation to that, did you offer advice from both a sporting perspective and then from an educational perspective? Because following my conversation with Georgie, I realized how important it is as a professional footballer and the benefits to playing with UCD and getting an undergraduate degree before you go into your long-term professional career, because he's having conversations with people in their late 30s about they're going back to start their degree and they have to do 7-8 years for an undergrad.
Yeah, I know. Like, I mean, my advice would probably be obviously get your Leaving Cert. If there's a way where you can do both during your university studies, that's what I would probably put forward. And, you know, I talked about my time at Astra and all the benefits that gave me. You know, I didn't feel the need to go to the States. You know, I had scholarship offers, but I felt the Ad Astra offered everything. I think it's important to get, you know, a degree under your belt before before you kind of lose sight of what it's like to study, and to lose that kind of routine, it's very hard. Like even the thought of, I'm thinking about, doing some part-time courses maybe next year, and like I've been out of the kind of whole study environment for a good few years, and the idea of going back to that is very difficult. So you'd want to definitely try and get something under your belt before you step away from that. And at least it gives you kind of a taste of what is out there, for then, even if you do walk away after your undergrad, you take a number of years away from, as I said, study or degrees, you might have a bit of an inkling as to what might interest you, because you've spent 3-4 years in university, and it kind of opens up your, the horizons and anything that kind of may be available to you. So yeah, that's the kind of route that I would advise. But again, like, if I had the opportunities now that 18-year-old females have, or sorry, if I had those opportunities back 10 years ago, like I'm not sure if anything would have changed in my course of action. I mean, I probably wouldn't have studied for that long, but like I'd probably be way more ahead in my football career than if I'd started only last year. An athlete's career is so short that it's a shame that I wouldn't go pro earlier. I have no regrets, because as I said, what was available to me 10 years ago is very different to what it is now. So but my career could have been different had I had those opportunities 10 years ago that are available now. So yeah, it's hard to say, but yeah, I think at the very least, getting an undergraduate is important. And then
you've been through an awful lot as an athlete that has led you to where you are now. So I know it's impossible to say what could have been or what would have been, but do you think that if you had gone professional that early, it would have changed you significantly as a person, having gone through the injuries that you've gone through? Firstly, you may not have experienced those injuries, because now you've spoken about the benefits of professionalism and the reduction in stresses and the facilities and resources that are available to you. So what could have been then? That question.
Exactly. I said it's hard to know really, but I mean, when you talk about my most two long-term to long-ish injuries, an ACL and osteitis pubis, I mean, both were down to like overworking, loading. I did my cruciate when I was working full-time in London while trying to play semi-professional football without a car, traveling up to 3 hours on public transport while basically doing kind of 2 jobs-ish. So and then my osteitis pubis came from loading as well, and that I did 6 months of a season in Ireland trying to push myself to my best while working from home, playing for Shells, playing for Ireland, trying to put myself in the shop window for championship clubs, getting that opportunity to go and play for Bristol City, unbelievable. And then going into an environment that's, higher demands physically and not giving my body a break. So that transition period, it's always when you're kind of reaching that transition period. Like when I did my cruciate, like I was looking to finish up at, my job a few months later at the end of that season. And I was pushing. And then I did my cruciate. So like, so yeah, had I gone pro, after I'd done my leaving cert, I'm sure I'd be a very different person today. Whether or not I would have experienced such difficult injuries, who knows? But I would have been a very different person. Yeah. Pros and cons, but yeah, it's been an
impossible to know as well. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
But from hearing about that, and what you didn't touch on there was you were also trying to finish out the League of Ireland season and travel back towards the end of that when you were starting off in England at the time with Charlton, was it?
You're right, actually. I'd forgotten about that. So when I first moved over to England in September 2019, I was flying home for games because we were kind of pushing for the league title, and Shells had kindly offered to kind of help contribute for flights if I could come back. So yeah, I was like flying home most weekends, and so I hadn't signed for Charlton yet. I was training with them during the week and then flying home to play for Shells the weekend while working full time Monday to Friday in London. Yeah. So I mean, like, it's amazing because those are the things that young females don't have to do anymore. And it's fantastic. It's a shame I couldn't have been part of that generation, but it doesn't really matter as long as things are improving for the next generation. That's the most important thing. But you live and learn. And
it's good that you're still involved as part of the first generation removed from that as well, though, because you can outline to the girls that are now experiencing the perks
yeah,
how grateful they should be for experiencing those perks.
Yeah.
Because you're probably extremely grateful at this stage to experience all the perks that professionalism has given you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the professional setup that I was involved in at Bristol City this season was unbelievable, like unbelievable. I'm so grateful. But yeah, I mean, every generation is grateful for the one that came before. Like, you know, the strike and getting equal pay with the Irish team, like grateful for the older girls who, you know, took a stand and everything. So just the way it is and the way life goes, but it's amazing. And the way the women's game is going is like so exciting.
It is exciting. And there was big news in the last day, or today and in the last couple of days, which was awesome as well. But before we go on to talk about that and the women's national team, I just wanted to reflect on what we were just talking about, because having all that going on sounds like an incredibly stressful time, and trying to fulfill everybody's needs and trying to fulfill all these verbal contracts or actual contracts with everybody and try and do everything that you possibly can. So when I was hearing this during the week and hearing about it, I was thinking like, wow, it sounds like Chloe really tries to keep everybody happy and might in fact have a problem saying no to some things.
Yeah.
Would that be fair to say? And then off the back of that, it sounds like potentially you put an awful lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah. I go to the second half of that. I do put a lot of pressure on myself, but I think as an ambitious person and, you know, as a high performing athlete, like it's just part of our DNA. And I don't think you get to, like, you know, the top of your sport unless you're kind of driven like that. I've definitely learned to say no more. And I think, you know, as you experience tough times and as you get a bit older, you probably learn when it's important to kind of prioritize you over other people or other situations. So yeah, I try and balance a lot, but so do many people. And yeah, I've definitely learned through my life experiences that listening to your body is really important. But, you know, as I said to the young girls and boys at Andrews, like the best athletes out there are probably those that know how to listen to their body in the best way possible, knowing when to rest. Because as I said, as a high performance athlete, like you are so driven and you want to work every single day, but actually to your detriment sometimes because you end up getting injured or whatever. So those people that can consistently win medals or consistently win awards are probably those that know when it's important to kind of stop, which I'm still trying to learn.
Yeah, we're all trying to learn it. Absolutely. Especially like working with athletes, like sometimes you need to suffer some few hard lessons before you learn it. But just to touch on awards and medals, something that was just evoked in my head there when talking about this is your experience at underage level with Ireland.
Yeah.
There are a lot of players on that under 17s group,
under
19s group that have gone on to bigger things. And we were talking previously about Sarah, and obviously we both know Sarah. And I see some parallels in terms of putting pressure on yourselves as athletes and then realizing the benefits of putting pressure on yourself as an athlete. But then also, as a result of that, having to learn the hard lessons at the age we all are now, that we need to listen to our bodies a little bit more. And obviously, Katie was on that team as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that he had simultaneously a huge positive impact on each other in that group coming through, as well as maybe you all have a common characteristic that you have a little, or have had a little bit of trouble switching off from being so driven?
Yeah, I mean, look, as I said, I think the best athletes out there find it hard to switch off, but because it's an obsession. Like, it's an obsession. You become obsessed with winning and being the best version of yourself. So, but yeah, I mean, like, thinking back to that squad, the under-19s team that made it to the Euros, like the Euros finals, like, was great group of athletes. Yeah, Sarah Rowe, obviously everything she's done in the GA Aussie rules and now still in football. And then Katie, well, speaks for herself. Her speaks for itself. And then, you know, Amy O'Connor playing for Cork, Megan Connolly playing for Brighton in Ireland, Savannah. I mean, so many girls, so many girls. So yeah, we had a lot of talent that year, but we had a good mentality as well, good friendships. So it all came together. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure, like, we still speak to each other the odd time as a core group from that squad, and it's lovely. You know, it's friendships for life, as they say with sports. So, but we spur each other on and we inspire each other. I think, look at Claire Shine, everything she's done as well off the pitch. So it's great to have that, and to have good people around you who will always back you no matter what.
Can you remember, or is there any experience or experiences that you can reflect on going through with that group that potentially maybe led to you guys putting such a value on being so hardworking? Was it the fact that you worked so hard and then did so well in the Euros that you all just learned, like, okay, if I work hard, good things happen?
I don't think at that age the idea of, like, prioritizing hard work was at the forefront of our minds. I think, like any, like, team or good team, sometimes everything just clicks in one given year. And I think that was that for us. Like, we had the quality on the pitch, obviously. We had the good mentality, as I said, in terms of, like, being driven, but also loving spending time with each other. I think if you, like, have a good atmosphere amongst the team, it really, really helps in terms of winning. And then we had a great coaching staff. We really enjoyed the management that year. And I think it just all came together, which got us kind of that far. So I don't think it was just purely down to hard work. Obviously we were all driven, so we did work hard, but it was just a lot of different factors that came together and that allowed us to reach the European semi-final.
Did you learn a lot from that experience and from that group, or from any group that you've been a part of in the last few years, around building that closeness of culture and that community within the team so that you can go on and achieve things as a group? Like,
yeah, I've learned a lot through all my clubs, to be honest, and all my teams. For me, like, I've been involved in teams where the atmosphere has been absolute poison, and where we had serious quality in the squad, but we couldn't win games because, you know, people would just get frustrated. People weren't actually friends, and no one wanted the next person to do better than them. It was just like everyone wanted to kind of step on each other's toes and be the best. And you can't, like, no matter what, you just can't achieve big things as a group if that's the mentality and the culture. So you talk about hard work, like, if you've got hard working group of individuals and who love spending time with each other, like, they're going to work 10 times hard for each other than if you want to play, you know, you want something bad to happen or you want that person to get injured. I mean, I'm not saying that's what we wished on each other, but the culture was terrible and we could have been the best. Arguably we're the best footballing side in the league, but we couldn't win. Like, we couldn't win. So I learned a lot that season. I won't talk about the club or the players, but yeah. And then obviously, you know, in contrast to the under-19s team that went so far that year, like, where we were just great mates, like, and we loved each other and we would do anything for each other. And we just, yeah, we worked really hard and we enjoyed it and we got far as a result.
is that process organic? Because you used the word clicked, like it clicked,
Yeah.
like it was almost a little bit passive. But I would imagine there are things that you can do to improve that community and that culture within the groups. And you've probably learned more of them in the last 6 years since the under-19s. Yeah. So is there any part of that process that's now conscious for you so that what happened with that one team that you're talking about doesn't happen again?
I mean, I don't want to say it's fully down to the management, because I think it's important as players we take responsibility, but it's important not having massive egos on the team as well. Like, I know it's hard because women's football is growing and there's more money involved and everything, but like, it's not that hard to be a good person. And I think, like, if you're a manager and you want to go far, my perspective and my experiences, you need to weed out the egos and the people who are going to just be creating crap conversations and just gossiping outside of football. And as much as you can, it's very difficult to completely eradicate it. But that's a good starting point, I think. And then
Definitely.
yeah. So for me, like, it kind of starts there in recruitment. You know, are you picking the right people to be essentially your family? Because, you know, when you're at that level and you're working together every single day and you all are working towards the same goal, like, you need to be good people. You need to be there for each other, because there can be difficult times in a season. So yeah, it's about having the right people, I think, or as many of those right good people as you can.
Have you ever had an instance where there has been a player that has been acting a little bit egotistical, but then following being pulled up on it by the group or the management, they have in time grown to be an integral part of the group? Or given that you've spent a bit of time at each team before moving on, has your time period been too short to kind of see that?
Probably the latter, to be honest. Like, I think it's fair to say, like, in Ireland, I mean, I didn't experience that in Ireland because of the stage of where the game is here. Like, everyone knows each other, everyone's good friends, there's not real big egos, no money in it. Like, everyone's doing it for the love of the game. Like, once you go over the pond and over to the UK, it's a little bit of a different story. So and I experienced a bit of it in France as well. Like, so I don't really have concrete examples of people.
At least in France, they'll be honest with each other.
Yeah, that's true, because they're a bit like straight shooters. But no, I haven't really, to be honest, had the chance to experience that change. But I just think it's important. Yeah, I just think it's important to just recruit the right people.
So what are the characteristics for a really good teammate then for you?
I think it's someone who, look, we are athletes, so we have ourselves at the forefront of our minds at all times, but it's a team sport. So, like, it's someone that no matter what is happening to them in terms of their playing time or how they're being viewed by the management staff, is always going to be there to support their teammates. You know, can be a very difficult time for someone if they're not playing and they're not getting the reasons why. We spoke about that. But I've had experience this year at Bristol of a couple of players and one person individual, like, in particular, that didn't get much playing time, but was by far the best teammate I could have ever asked for. And the rest of the players would have said that. Just came in, smile on their face, shown up, worked hard, and just was grateful and appreciated. And I was definitely upset and aggrieved by the fact that she wasn't playing much, but, you know, was just there to support the rest of her teammates. You know, what's going on with you is nothing to do with why such and such is playing. Like, that's a manager's decision. So being able to support your teammates while dealing with your own situation, I think, is a prime example of a good teammate.
Absolutely. And it's a very difficult place to be in and a very difficult experience to go through as a player when you're not playing. Something I learned, and something that I've seen a lot of players learn and some not learn, is if you're not selected and you fall on that wrong side of the draw, coming in with a positive perspective after you've spent the time to feel disappointed, because you are fully justified in feeling disappointed, but reframing it and coming in with a positive perspective is much more likely to get you back into the team than the alternative. I think it was potentially Jason Leonard on the 1997 Lions tour. He was nailed on to start, and then a test came around and it was Paul Wallace, I think, who started ahead of him. And he decided then, he said, well, I'm not going to play. That's fair enough, but I'm going to make sure that Paul is the best prepared player for that game at the weekend that he possibly can be. And I'm going to be the best possible teammate that I can be.
Now, let's not kid ourselves. Like, it takes a special kind of person to do that. And no one's saying you need to be everyone's number one supporter, but you need to, you know, be pleasant, and you need to you need to encourage your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. But at the end of the day, like what I've also learned is that management are watching you all the time. And what you do off the pitch is sometimes just as important as what you do on it. So yeah.
And like, also to use your phrase, and let's not kid ourselves as well, that's not telling people to go in and say, I'm being pleasant, so I'm just going to be pleasant old me. I'm just going to sit here and like, oh, well done, good job. It also means get absolutely stuck into them in training, like, because that's going to prepare your teammates for the game. Because I've seen it fall the other side where athletes have been disappointed, so then they've become completely passive in training, and then they might as well not be there, to be honest.
I mean, it can go either way in terms of being passive or being too aggressive, which isn't great either. But yeah, I mean, and that's where a sports psychologist comes in as well with the team. I mean, we had a sports psychologist at Bristol this year, and he, you know, he did group sessions, he did one-on-ones, but he was available to speak to people throughout the season, which I think is really important as well, and being able to reframe your thoughts and help you through those difficult times.
Was it important for you going through the injury this year? Like, did you lean on him or her a lot?
Yeah. His name's James. I spoke to James a couple of times one-on-one this side of Christmas, kind of when times are particularly tough with getting me kind of sorted and on the right rehab program. So yeah, I felt quite lost, and I definitely leaned on him a good bit, and just you need reassuring that everything that you're feeling is normal. But but look, I think people have different experiences with sports psychologists, but it's worth trying, in my opinion.
Does it get any easier at all? All of the injuries and having to go through, not to mention, like, obviously what you went through when you were 18 as well, like with Hodgkin's lymphoma, like, is it still just as hard for you to go through these things as others? Because I'm sure other people probably would say to you sometimes, sure, Chloe, you're really strong, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Is that difficult?
Yeah. I found it quite difficult this time around with my osteitis pubis, because like obviously I went through chemo and I went through a year and a half out with my ACL, and then, you know, I get osteitis pubis in my first pro season, and it's like, yeah, shit one, but like you've been through worse. And I'm like, yeah, I have, but like still sucks. You know, and just because I've been through difficult times doesn't really make this that much easier. And with every experience, it brings us different challenges. I mean, this time around was very difficult for different reasons. A lot of uncertainty around what was going on, getting a proper diagnosis, getting me on the right rehab program. The looming World Cup brought its own pressures. My first pro season, I was on a 1+1. Would I get offered another contract? Like, so many different, you know, challenges came with this injury that, you know, I didn't have to worry about, particularly when I was going through my ACL, and times were kind of a bit simpler in that sense. So it depends obviously on the nature of the injury, but I think, yeah, I don't think it necessarily made it that much easier for me with what happened this time around. But look, in terms of what I went through with Hodgkin's lymphoma, like that will forever stick with me in terms of giving me perspective. And like I had a mini scare back in January actually with my Hodgkin's lymphoma, and like it was the same time where I was like trying to figure out what's going on with my osteitis pubis, and that again, it just brings you back down to ground. A bit of perspective, Chloe, like as long as you're, you know, healthy to an extent, like that's all that matters. But it's still pretty shitty to go through difficult times, and doesn't really get that much easier. It just allows you to have a bit of perspective when you need it.
And that's what, from all of your interviews, I've kind of heard in your voices, you always have a very calm, confident, positive and resilient outlook on what you're going through. Is there something that you've learned through each of these experiences, maybe something different from each of them, or something that you anchor yourself to every single day to enable you to go through them?
Yeah. I think the most important thing I've learned from that is just like, if I'm doing everything I can every day to get better, if I'm injured or whatever it may be, or like obviously, you know, I was in the squad every time for a year, and then I get injured 6 months before the World Cup, and then it's like, okay, am I going to be in, if I get back in time, like, am I still going to be considered? And like, you know, being really upset about that. But the thing I need to remind myself is like, I can only control what I can control. And if like I'm doing everything I can every single day to get back playing, and if I'm doing everything in my off season, every day in my off season to be as fit as I can, as ready as I can, and I'm not picked, then so be it. I have no regrets. You know, if I'm not on that plane, at least I can look back at the past 3 months back on pitch, be like, even the past 6 months through rehab, like, I've done everything I can. I can't change what's happened to me. I can only affect, you know, my own training schedule, my own
your own efforts,
my own sleep, my own nutrition, all of these things. Like, so, like, yeah, that's the kind of thing I've learned the most, is just control what I can. Now, obviously, like, it's easier said than done. There's days where like I was crying and so upset at the situation, and like, why me? Why this in my first pro season? Why this 6 months out from a World Cup when, you know, it was looking likely like, you know, would be going or whatever. So, yeah, it's hard, but life is flipping hard. And if you can just do your best to control what's in your control, as they say, like, that's all you can really do. So that's probably the biggest learning I've had through all this.
It's the same thing as we just talked about with the disappointment, not to the same extent, obviously, but when you suffer disappointment, you're entitled to feel like that for a while, but it's reframing it once you've felt like that and you've finished feeling like that. You're ready to move on. And being productive and constructive in what you're going to do. And it just reminds me of the John Wooden quote that I'm going to absolutely butcher, where he says, success is doing everything that you possibly can do. And there is real comfort in knowing that you couldn't have done anything else, regardless if you win or lose.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're not really attaching yourself to the outcome of getting back into the squad, even though you really, really want to be in the squad. You're just controlling the controllables. I am interrupting the podcast to let you guys know that there are 2 spots available in the Petey Performance Premium Pack for May. Now, this could be online coaching, this could be in-person coaching, but I am closing the group to a limited number of people because I want to deliver the best quality service to the people that are in the group. And things have been going really, really well. So I've been left with 2 spots for May, and I've also been left with 2 spots for June. People have been signing up for June as well, which is absolutely unbelievable. So we are almost full, but if you want to avail of some online or in-person coaching, or maybe the hybrid service, make sure you message me as soon as possible so that you don't miss out. We're delivering high quality care of strength and conditioning to mostly club level GAA players, but some county level players as well. And we've been getting great feedback about the service. More and more people are joining, which means that we've been doing something right. So if you want to be one of the members of the exclusive group, the PD Performance Premium Pack, message me ASAP so that you don't miss out for May and June. And now back to the podcast. So we can move on to talking about the women's national team now, and obviously the off season that you have. What are the hopes and aspirations of getting back into that squad? And then what is the path or the program that's going to get you there, hopefully?
Yeah. So look, the first priority was get back on the pitch. Get back on the pitch before the end of the season. That was my number 1 priority. Managed to do that 3 games out. Great. Got some game time. Then the next priority was, okay, well, how do I get myself really fit and selectable for, you know, camp on the 12th of June? So thankfully we have a fantastic group of staff at Bristol City. So they've put together like, you know, pretty good off-season program. Well, when I say off-season, I mean, I'm pretty much trying to replicate the demands of a training week or a game day, you know, over these 6 weeks, with different weeks being tougher than others, depending on the kind of like periodization and all that. So that's what I'm in the middle of at the moment. It's hard to do that on your own, but again, just the thought of potentially being at the World Cup is just getting me through it. And then
Greg is in season as well, so he's still training away, so that might make it easier.
Yeah, he's up, God-forsaken hour every morning, fortunately to me. The only good thing about being in your off season is you got more control over your hours and whatever. So, but yeah, he's up whatever, however many days a week up early. So it gets me up, I go out and do my training when he's up out at the club. So, and then yeah, look, we're waiting to hear about selection for the 3-week pre-camp ahead of the World Cup. So just getting myself selectable for that. And if I'm not selected for that, then so be it. And I might have a week because I won't have had a proper holiday. I didn't get time off because I was only kind of getting back. So I'll get some time off then before hitting pre-season with Bristol. So
there's always a positive.
There's always a positive. And I did an interview with 42, I think it was like a few days after we secured promotion with Bristol. And like, look, it's easy for me to say now if I'm not selected for the World Cup, like, life goes on and I'm going to be so upset if that's the case. But like, if I look back to the past 12 months of my footballing career, like what an unbelievable year, being part of a squad that's qualified for the World Cup and being part of a squad that's secured promotion to WSL, to arguably the best league in the world, and to get offered a new contract, and to be kept on and to be able to be involved in the WSL club next season, like that's a dream come true. So look, I have so much to look forward to if I don't make that plane, and I need to try and remember that. And I'm sure my friends and family and Greg will remind me of that if it comes down to the fact that I'm not going. So I'm just trying to keep that at the back of my mind that, whatever happens will happen. And I just need to be happy that I'm back playing and look ahead to next season if that's the case. Like,
that's why reflection is so important as well, because me reflecting on your previous interviews, a major ambition in you going to England was you wanted to play in Super League.
Yeah, I know.
So like,
I know.
Now you've just said there with the new contract, it's going to happen. So
I know
you are, and you must be immensely grateful for that. But as athletes and as people that are driven, as you said, it's always next thing.
Yeah, no, I know it's always the next thing. But like I was saying to the Andrew students as well, like luck plays a part as well in life, and like you create your own luck. Because I was out for half the season and like I could have not had a contract renewed, been out half the season, not kept on to move up to the WSL. So I worked hard to earn that contract. But I had one or two other offers from other championship clubs last season, and I chose to go with Bristol City, and Bristol got promoted. You know what I mean? And now I'll be playing the WSL. Had I gone with one of the other clubs, I would be still playing the championship next year. So like, yeah, it's amazing. And luck does play a part in your career, but I do think you create your own luck as well. So it's a bit of both.
I've also heard you say previously that you believe things happen for a reason too. So obviously we can create our own luck and we can do our best to put ourselves in the best position possible to realize what we want to realize and to achieve what we want to achieve. But Johnny Wilkinson, who is obviously a huge influence of mine, he reckons that each of the injuries he suffered throughout his career, and there was many injuries, were trying to teach him a different lesson or tell him something that he needed to learn. Do you think you've learned something from each of the experiences you've gone through? And then has it all led to whatever the culmination is going to be in playing either in the World Cup or the Super League?
100%. I think everything you live through, you grow through. Is that the same? Some similar saying? Now, if you'd ask me,
this whole podcast just us quoting people.
If you ask me, would I rather have not had Hodgkin's lymphoma? Like, yes. Would I rather not have torn my ACL or had osteoarthritis? Yes. So that like my career, my life could have been so much more different. But I would be a different person then. And you just can't change what happens to you. So I do think I've learned a lot from each experience for sure. But like, I'm not going to sit here and say like, I'm grateful I went through those experiences. Like, no, I'm not. I'd rather have not lost my hair as a 19-year-old going through chemotherapy, or, like I'd rather not have struggled with my mental health through my ACL recovery. Like, so, it's a bit of both, but yeah, for sure. I agree with him. Like every experience has taught me a lot, and I'm like a better person for it in that sense. But like tough times are tough, and like no one really wants to go through them.
But it does seem like you are very good at acceptance to an extent, in that, like, I've heard you speak about that experience of losing your hair and just being like, well, yeah, it is what it is. Like,
yeah. Well, I think like back then I mean, it was an awful experience for me, but like when you're faced with something like life or death, like you just roll with the punches, because you're just like, I need, this is what I need to do. Like, it's no black or white, like it's life or death, like you need to do this. So yeah, and look, I think in life, like you don't really have a choice as to what happens to you. It's, when I was going through my ACL rehab, I like started to listen to a lot of podcasts and did a lot of walking because I couldn't run, obviously. So that was my way of just like letting loose a little bit, just going for walks and listening to podcasts. And like, I listened to the high performance podcasts a lot back then. And, I kept hearing, it's not about what happens to you, it's about your reaction. And I wholeheartedly believe in that, because everyone will go through tough times in their life. It's just how you react to those. So
is that something you speak about amongst the squad, or is it just a personal thing? Because it seems in a number of teams you've been involved in, when backs against the wall, girls stand up, like, and are like, let's go ahead. Like, we can still do it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's very much a personal thing that I feel. But look, I think as females, we just like to have that mentality of like, I'm going to prove you wrong, because we've spent how many years trying to prove males wrong, that, we can play and we deserve this and we deserve that. So I think that's just in our nature. But from a personal perspective, like, everything I've gone through has just taught me, like, just accept it. And what are you going to do about it, Chloe? Like, you can't change it. So what are you going to do about it? So that's just something that's personal to me, I think.
To just touch on what you've just said there in regards to the women's game and how far it's come and how far it's still going. And we obviously had the news of the Aviva game today, which is class. It must be interesting for you, being that you are the generation that has partly been before all of this happening and then realizing it.
I know, it's fantastic. It's quite frankly, it's unbelievable that we've kind of reached this stage, and a lot of credit to the staff, to the Irish women's team staff. Gareth Maher, who's our head of media, like he's been immense for our team. Like, he's worked so hard over the past few years in pushing the kind of Irish women's team agenda and getting us, access to stuff that we deserve. So it's amazing, and it's really exciting, and I look forward to hopefully being involved in that game. So yeah, it's unfortunate maybe that we couldn't have had a kind of our send-off there, but it's probably best to kind of leave it till after the World Cup, because we're comfortable in Tala and that's where the fans like to come to and stuff. But it'll be a new era then post the World Cup, heading to the Aviva.
Yeah, and like, it's kind of hard to see, or well, at least I find it difficult to see where it's going or how far it can go. Like, it's just in my head, it's like, well, eventually it's going to be on par with the men's, probably, by the way things are going.
Yeah, hard to kind of gauge. I think, like, you can't deny physically, like, we're never going to be to the same level that men are, or not for a very long time, until like research has.
But in terms of support and like eyes, because I just reflecting on what's happened in the Emirates, like in the last few weeks, like with how many was 60,000 or something at that game.
That's true. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. Will it ever reach quite the same level? I don't know. I mean, we'd need like full support from the male community, and I'm not sure we'll ever get that. Which is fair. Like, there's differences, as I said, in the physicality and the sport and the speed and the game and everything. So it's hard to say, but it's absolutely unimaginable the changes that we've seen over the past just 3 years alone in women's soccer. So I'm really excited to see where it'll go in my kind of lifetime.
Maybe I'm just toxically positive, but like, that's what I'm reflecting on is if it's come that far in 3 years, is it a snowball effect or is it going to plateau out? And I probably choose to decide that it's a snowball effect. But then to touch on like what is needed that you've just said there in terms of support from the male community, what is needed, do you think, in order to further progress the sport? The standard, obviously, from my perspective, I think the eyes have come because of the standard improving, and the standard have improved because of the resources and the investment. It's not like resources investment only. And it's not like pushing media only. It's like all of these things together, creating a cascade.
For me, the number one thing is research in women. Like
there's none.
Well, I don't know how much there is, but there's drastically less than in men, and we need to know more about the female body. Like we just need to know more about it. Like everything that we're doing, or most things that we're still doing, is geared towards what we know about a male body, and like we just need to change that. And until we have adequate research in female bodies, like we're never going to be able to do everything that we can to have the female body working at optimum levels, in my opinion. So that's the number one thing I think that will really like allow us to jump another level. And then secondly, just more resources, like just access to like we're lucky at Bristol that we have such good like facilities and staff and S&C coaches, but not every club has that. And just need better, even more resources. We've come such a long way, but we need more.
I didn't expect that answer, but it makes perfect sense as well. Especially being in coaching, and having to coach both male and female teams, like I spoke about with you prior to the conversation. Like when I was coming up and in my undergraduate and learning about coaching, either like privately or whatever, or in college, I was taught this is how you communicate, this is how you coach, this is how you deal with this scenario, this is how you do this. And only upon reflection and only upon like experiencing what I experienced, I was like, now I look back and I'm like, that was all how you communicate, how you deal with a problem with male athletes. And now being in female sport, I know from trial and error, it's not the same. It doesn't work. What works with a male athlete will not work with a female athlete. So like all of the learning that I've had to do around how females interpret information and whatnot, it's not been coaching focused. It's been like psychology focused. And there is a serious lack of research, obviously, into how to improve female athleticism. And it makes perfect sense that you go there, but I don't know why I just didn't think about it at all. But
but you're right though in terms of communication style as well. I mean, like even if you look at office-based jobs, like if you have a manager that's not being respectful towards you, like why would you want to work hard for them and for their company, you know, or for the CEO? Like why, if these people aren't nice to you, like I don't want to show up at 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 and work hard and get you more clients. Like, well, I mean, if your manager is not like treating you with respect, like you're as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, like you're not going to want to show up training. Like you get the best out of people when you treat them the way they want to be treated. And like, you know, something we spoke a lot about at Bristol this season is like, how do we get the most and the best out of each other? Like, you know, what does this person value? What does that person value? Having an open dialogue and conversation and understanding who you're working with, because like, yes, it's a sport, but we're all people. Fundamentally, we are humans and we need to be happy in our working environment. So how do we make each other happy day to day so that we get the most out of each other? And like, that's important. And if you, if male individuals or female individuals don't know how to get the best out of their players, then like you're losing out on percentages, you know what I mean? So that's important as well.
I've found like and I've learned it the hard way, females like the nuances in terms of communication. They like having everything laid out, like, and talking openly and covering all bases. Whereas male athletes, and these are generalizations, they don't want any nuance. They want direct, this is what we're doing, one word if possible. Like and I remember trying to get the ladies around to like having like a dossier of key points, and it was like, okay, it should be 3 words minimum, and they were just like, no, like why would it be 3 words? Like
Yeah.
it should be 20 words.
Yeah.
And then I was pushing and pushing and pushing for them to do it my way until I came across a piece of research in regards to psychology, and instructions. If offered more or less words for the same instructions, the men generally went with less and the female generally went with more.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm an idiot.
Yeah. But like it takes time to realize that. But yeah, it's definitely true. It's definitely true. But like we need to understand one another. And yeah, I really do believe that. Like if you have good people and you understand what makes them tick, then you can get the most out of them.
So then what are the characteristics of the really good coaches that you've worked with in terms of their communication style, to just go off the back of what we've been just talking about?
Open dialogue. Like not feeling like you have the answers to everything, speaking to your players, asking them how they feel about certain thing. Obviously not asking them how they feel about everything, because at the end of the day, I don't think players should have a say in everything. But like, having honest conversations with your players and treating them with respect and making sure that you're not excluding people, you're not just prioritizing your starting 11 as opposed to the whole squad, which is very difficult. And I don't shy away from that for managers. But yeah, it's just, being honest and having an open dialogue, generally speaking, with your players.
And you've spoken about the national team and being in conversations around where you stand and what you need to do to get into that squad, and then working very hard towards it. If you do get into the squad, hopefully, when you do, maybe I should say, what are you going to frame it like in your head? Is it going to be the next thing, and is it going to be World Cup like focus straight away, or do you prefer not to think about that right now?
Well, if I get selected, I'm going to be absolutely over the moon. Again, I'll probably reflect on everything that I've been through, not only in this year, but throughout my career and my life. But I'll be immensely grateful. I mean, I can't shy away from the fact that the competition is huge to get into that team. And like, it's easy for someone to say, well, I think she deserves it, or I think she deserves it. Everyone deserves it. And you don't know what she's doing, like when she, behind closed doors, or how much is she training or whatever. And like everyone's working hard. So look, I'm not saying I deserve it more than anyone else. Like I definitely wouldn't say that. So I just know that if I am selected, I'll be massively grateful and I'll cherish that experience for the rest of my life. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not thinking too far ahead. I'm just thinking about firstly selection for the pre-camp and then go from there. But yeah, competition is massive, and look, we want it to be there because that's the only way the game improves. So we'll see.
But that's what's seemingly so shocking, like from an external perspective, is the competition is so high, and like there's new girls in every squad, and every time they like kill it when they come in, like which is obviously fantastic to have, but difficult when you're in the squad. But it also drives the squad onto higher standards. But I have found, and it feels like there's a huge positivity, like furore around the national team at the moment. Like, do we as fans kind of need to get a handle on ourselves a little bit? Like, what's a realistic expectation for the World Cup?
I don't know. Like, look at the group. It's hard. It's tough. But look at every group. Every group is so hard. You're literally at a World Cup. Like, so.
Do we need to practice what you're practicing? A bit of gratitude of being there.
Yeah. Look, I think deep down, all the fans know that the fact that we're there in the first place is a massive achievement. But we want more, and we want to go there and, show what we can do. We are not just there to participate. We're there to kind of show that, Ireland are really pushing for, top 10 spot in the coming years, hopefully. So look, we'll see. We have a tough group. We just need to make sure that hopefully we beat Nigeria, and then we manage to grab some points off one of the other two and go from there. So it's going to be tough, but look at the girls, what they did against the USA, so it's possible. It's definitely not impossible. So and I'm sure that Vera and Tom and the staff will have really good preparation and sorted for June, so that we're in the best position possible going away to Australia.
I can't even imagine what it's like from a management or coaching perspective. Like,
I know. What a nightmare. What a nightmare having to pick a squad for that. Like,
I know. Like,
yeah,
it's just so looming. Like,
I know. No, it feels like honestly yesterday that we were at Hampden Park and we qualified. Like, ridiculous. Well, yesterday. It feels like last month.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think, look, the beauty of the fact that it's our first major tournament means that, yes, there will be huge disappointment, but there'll be a lot of excitement despite that. You know what I mean? And, you know, maybe for the likes of England, they always qualify. So, you know, it may be more difficult for girls to miss out in a sense because, you know, I don't know, it's just more usual that they qualify and they want to be there. And I know in another way it's hard because we may never qualify for another major tournament, or at least in my career. So if I don't make this one, will I ever make another one? But I'm also so ecstatic that we've even made it, that I'm just like, look, if for whatever reason I'm not on that plane, I'm going to be shouting to the cows come home that, you know, that when the games are on that we win and that she does well. And so it's a bit difficult to see where you stand, but overall, like, I think everyone's just delighted that we've made it. And for the girls, whoever they may be that don't get on that plane, will be just as happy for those that did.
But it sounds like it's for the team, which, to throw back to what we started speaking about, is how you build an effective and positive culture in a team. Is it needs to be team orientated and team focused rather than for the individual. So
it's hard to keep that going, I think, over the generations as things improve, as things professionalize. Like, I think it'll be hard for little old Ireland to have that, like, culture, especially in the international teams, maybe, because I don't know, like, there'll be bigger and better players as generations go on. And like, how do you keep that small kind of country?
How do you deal with being favorites rather than underdogs?
Exactly. You know what I mean? And things change. So right now it's great excitement for Ireland, and it's great excitement for the squad and everyone involved, because we've worked so goddamn hard to get here. And just, hopefully we'll be able to kind of keep that culture, but it will be harder, and that mentality will be harder as we qualify, hopefully, more and more for major tournaments.
But it'll be a privilege to get there, even, like.
Yeah.
And it'll be because of the work that's gone in over the years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, it sounds like you, and we've spoke about it already, have an immense amount, like, deal of gratitude for being part of that World Cup qualification, then the promotion. And like, from interviews you've done in the past, it seems like, given all the setbacks you've had, sometimes you almost surprise yourself with how far you've come. So like, would that be fair to say? And then how much further do you think you can go as an athlete?
Yeah. I am surprised at how far I've come. I'm surprised at what's happened in the past 12 months. Like, you know, I was still working full time for Maven Search from home. I was playing for Shells, and now look at everything that's happened in my football career. So it's amazing. Life is amazing, for good and the bad. But in terms of where it can go, like, you know, I'm turning 28 this summer. Like, I'd love to have another few years of full-time football. But the competition is really high, as I said. So I don't know. Like, I'll give WSL a whack for the next couple of years, hopefully, and see how that improves me, you know, as a player. I think you need to keep playing with better players to keep getting better. So I'm kind of taking a stepping stone approach in that, you know, I moved to the championship, really good players in the championship, and now we secured promotion to WSL. So now I'll have a lot better players again in training. Next season, I'm sure we'll bring in new players. So how much can I keep improving? I'm sure I can. I think I can. But to what extent, I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to tell now. But yeah, I'm just proud of myself because I've come through a lot, and I'll have, you know, I'll be, whether or not I become world famous player, I'll still be happy with what I've achieved, and that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. And you should be proud of yourself as well, because you have been through a lot. It sounds like you're very, very good at staying in the present and staying focused on what you can focus, even though we've spoken about a lot of uncertainty in the last few years. And from hearing you speak in the past, you do have looming uncertainties, and they do affect you and affect your stress levels. Is that something that you're constantly trying to improve?
I'm definitely constantly trying to stay in the present more. I wouldn't say I'm good at that. Always looking at the next best thing, as you said. But I think you just don't know what's around the corner. And like, one thing I try and live by is like, don't get too carried away with the highs, but don't get too carried away with the lows as well. So enjoy the highs when they come, like securing promotion at Ashton Gate, qualifying for the World Cup at Hampden Park. And then, you have the bad times of, osteitis pubis, and you miss half of your first pro season, and you're a question mark for the World Cup. And like, it's hard, but I just think you need to enjoy the good times. And I'm trying to stay in the present more, but it is very difficult. Like, very difficult as a full-time athlete. You're always trying to better yourself and look ahead and what's next and what could be next, and how do if I want to get there, like, what do I need to be doing now? And like, it's very hard.
And the paradox of it is you're only going to play your best when you are fully in the present, and you're not focused on the outcome at all, which is incredibly hard to get around to. But you have to be focused somewhat on the outcome, or wanting to achieve the outcome along the journey, but you can't attach yourself to it. And that's how people reframe it, by being a little bit more process focused, and then they can actually reflect and enjoy the journey a little bit more. But
I think it's about setting, like, one thing I learned, I had a few one-to-ones with like a life coach before coming back after going through my ACL, just to kind of like, how do I regain confidence by getting back on the pitch? And like, the one thing, Danny Crowley was his name, and the one thing he told me was just setting small goals. Like, and that's actually really good, because it's just, you don't think about 9 months down the line, you just think about 6 weeks down the line. So how do I get back playing before the end of the season? Okay, this is what I need to do. Okay, I've done that. How do I get myself in the best physical shape to be selectable for the pre-camp? Okay, I'm in the middle of doing that, and that I need to think about that every day when I get up. Oh, I'm tired, don't want to do that. No, I got to do it. Like, so I think it's just like small goals and small steps to reach your ultimate goal, and I think that's the best way to go about it.
Well, hopefully the ultimate goal is achieved, even if after it's achieved, there will be another one straight away afterwards. But we're going to wrap up with some quick fire questions. The first one is proudest achievement to date.
Probably my start against Sweden last year, first competitive senior start.
Like, you have that jersey?
Yeah.
Framed?
I don't. Greg Sloggett, my boyfriend, got the jersey from Hampden Park framed for my mum nice. For the World Cup qualification for Christmas. So I have that framed, but I know I have the other ones in a box. But I mean, I'd like to say like, overcoming an ACL and stuff, but like, I mean, getting the nod for starting 11 against Sweden, like after 6 months after my ACL, come back my ACL, like, that's unbelievable, and I'm so proud of that. So yeah, probably that one.
Nice. Favorite athlete of all time?
Yeah, I'm kind of funny in the sense that like, I've never really idolized anyone. I think, why not idolize yourself? That's what I said to the Andrews kids. Just be proud of yourself. But I do really like Katie Taylor, because I think she's really, really humble, and I like people who are humble. So I look at her and I'm just like, look, you're literally one, if not the best female boxer in the world. Like, and look, she's such a nice person. So yeah, probably her.
Yeah, big props to Katie. Yeah. Unfortunate the loss at the weekend, but
she'll come
I'm sure she'll come back and win, like, no doubt about it. What's the biggest thing you've learned in the last 12 months?
Probably what I said to you a few minutes ago. Just don't get too carried away with the highs, and don't get too carried away with the lows. Just enjoy them, and then just know that when you're going through a difficult time, like, it will pass eventually.
And then finally, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Just probably consistency is key. Like, that's been the most important thing for me, is just making sure that I'm consistent. I don't have to be the best player in the world, but as long as I'm showing up and doing the work every single day, I'll get as close to there as I'll ever be, really. So just be consistent and do the best of your ability.
Great message to finish. Thanks a million for coming on, Chloe. That's been brilliant.
Thank you.